If you were to walk into a corporate boardroom today, or just, log onto a standard company video call.
Which we all do way too much.
Way too much. But you would probably think you were entering this highly rational, completely sanitized environment.
Oh, absolutely. The language people use is designed to feel so detached and safe.
Right. It's all synergy and leverage and action items.
Yeah, it feels like a machine generated the vocabulary just to keep emotion out of the room entirely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you actually listen to the specific idioms people deploy when the pressure is really on, that sterile facade drops completely.
It really does.
You realize you aren't in a safe boardroom at all.
Mm-hmm.
You are actually standing in the middle of a medieval church, surrounded by 1980s drag queens, watching soldiers throw live explosives at each other while a wild animal claws at the carpet.
Which is quite the visual, honestly.
It is.
Yeah.
And today's deep dive is going to fundamentally change the way you look at everyday office conversations.
Because it's all hiding in plain sight, embedded right there in our daily vocabulary.
For sure.
So today, we are analyzing this fascinating source document that isolates 12 very specific idioms. And what makes this source compelling isn't just the list itself, but how it weaves these 12 phrases together to tell a complete high-stakes business narrative.
Right. It tracks the life cycle of a corporate project.
Exactly. Taking us from the birth of a startup, facing an existential crisis, through periods of sabotage, all the way to a final, aggressive, strategic victory.
And our mission for this deep dive is to map that journey. We aren't here just to give you dictionary definitions of these phrases. You already know what they mean.
Right, you use them every day.
Exactly. We're going to dig into the bizarre, wildly varied historical origins of these idioms to understand the hidden psychology of the modern workplace. Okay, let's unpack this. The narrative starts where every new initiative starts, the initial setup phase.
Yeah, the classic kickoff meeting.
Right. A team is gathered, a plan is made, but hovering right over that meeting is a glaring, massive trap.
It is the baseline reality of almost every new venture. At the very beginning of the process, there is a fundamental flaw, a glaring issue that absolutely no one in the room is willing to acknowledge.
Because the social contract of the meeting takes precedence over the actual operational reality of the business.
Precisely. Which brings us to the first phrase in our narrative, the elephant in the room.
Ah, yes.
Our source traces this idiom back to the mid-20th century, and the visual it creates is intentionally, painfully absurd.
Like you have to picture a literal, multi-ton elephant just standing there in a small, cramped 1950s living room.
Yeah, it's knocking over lamps with its trunk, crushing the coffee table.
While a group of people just sit on the sofa sipping tea, rigidly pretending not to see it, purely to avoid the awkwardness of bringing it up.
The mechanism at play there is cognitive dissonance, and it translates perfectly to modern business. Think of a product team ignoring the fact that a competitor just released an app that is twice as fast and half the price.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Everyone at the table privately knows their own product is now doomed.
But acknowledging that out loud means halting the project, admitting failure, and ruining the polite, optimistic fiction of the strategy meeting.
Right. We consistently choose the comfort of social consensus over the friction of reality.
We really do.
So, because acknowledging the giant mammal destroying the room requires immediate painful action, the team looks anywhere else. They focus entirely on the minutia. They start checking the boxes.
Which is a phrase that originates directly from early administrative paper forms.
Like the literal act of marking a square next to a mandatory task.
Exactly. In a corporate setting, checking boxes is ostensibly about compliance and risk mitigation. You are fulfilling the mandatory requirements laid out by the legal or HR departments.
But the danger of checking boxes is that it operates, it's essentially the corporate version of a paint-by-numbers kit.
Oh, that is a great analogy.
Right. Like you can technically fill in all the designated colors, and at the end of the day, you can hold up a piece of paper that physically resembles a painting of a horse. It looks technically complete at the end.
Sure, it checks all the boxes.
But nobody is actually inspired by it. There is zero creative spark, and it certainly is going to disrupt the market.
And the problem with the paint-by-numbers approach isn't just the lack of creativity. The real danger is how it misleads leadership.
Oh, totally.
When a team successfully colors inside the lines for 6 months, checking every administrative box on time, upper management starts assuming they have a team of master artists.
Right. They base next year's financial forecasts on a fundamental misunderstanding of the team's actual output.
They mistake bureaucratic compliance for genuine innovation.
And that misunderstanding leads right into the third phase of the initial setup, Because leadership is looking at a fully checked-off list, they assume the project is going swimmingly.
Which our source notes dates back to the 1500s. The imagery is of a highly skilled swimmer gliding smoothly through calm, undisturbed water with absolutely no resistance.
With early software testing progressing effortlessly with 0 bugs.
Exactly.
But I have a really hard time buying this illusion. I mean, how can an entire company convince itself they're gliding through calm waters when there's a giant elephant standing right next to the pool?
That's the thing. They convince themselves because they're only swimming in the shallow end.
Ah, I see.
That is the insidious nature of the initial setup phase. The immediate environment feels entirely safe and frictionless, specifically because they're only tackling the easy administrative tasks.
They're actively avoiding the deep water where the real complex problems live.
Exactly. But the narrative doesn't let them stay in the shallow end forever. Eventually, the product has to launch, the hidden flaws are exposed, and that smooth sailing is violently derailed by financial reality.
The budget runs out, the metrics fall flat, and panic sets in across the executive team.
Which shifts our narrative into the second major phase, financial fumbles and scope creep.
Right, because when the money gets tight, management starts desperately deploying short-sighted tactics, starting with the classic strategy of robbing Peter to pay Paul.
A true classic.
I found the history of this one so fascinating. It dates back to the Middle Ages, referring specifically to the practice of transferring church funds from St. Peter's Church to pay off the debts of St. Paul's Cathedral.
What's fascinating here is the historical irony. St. Peter and St. Paul are on the exact same side. Transferring that wealth doesn't enrich the kingdom at all. It just moves a deficit from one ledger to another.
The net loss remains identical.
It is the perfect distillation of the modern corporate budgetary shell game. A company will quietly shift long-term marketing funds to cover a massive, unexpected monthly cloud hosting bill.
And the executive who executed the transfer gets lauded for solving the immediate cash flow crisis. But the company itself is structurally weaker.
They bought themselves another quarter of survival, but they sacrificed their own future to do it.
Yeah, and because they've just drained their long-term resources, the anxiety at the top reaches a boiling point. They realize incremental progress isn't going to save them anymore.
No, they need a miracle.
Which triggers the next idiom, the demand to boil the ocean.
To boil the ocean is a concept rooted in the laws of physics. It is an act that is physically impossible, requiring infinite energy, and even if it could be achieved, it yields 0 practical benefit.
Right. So in the business narrative, it represents the ultimate failure of scope management.
Instead of instructing a team to build a simple, working prototype, essentially, just boiling a small pot of water-terrified management demands a single, monolithic solution that solves every systemic company problem simultaneously.
But let's look at the psychology of why management asks for the ocean to be boiled. It's not just incompetence, It's desperation.
Oh, absolutely.
When you're operating in a zero-sum game, constantly robbing Peter to pay Paul, small, iterative steps feel insufficient. Agile development feels too slow when the ship is sinking.
They demand a silver bullet because they are terrified of the alternative.
Exactly. But that desperation forces an impossible burden onto the workforce. Because leadership doesn't just ask the team to boil the ocean.
No, they simultaneously demand that the team do it without breaking a sweat.
Which is such a massive paradox in corporate expectations. Management warns you not to boil the ocean, yet expects you to fix massive critical failures without breaking a sweat.
It's totally contradictory. Breaking a sweat is a biological indicator. When the human body exerts itself, it heats up and it produces sweat to cool down.
It is a visible, undeniable biological broadcast of physical strain.
So to demand that someone perform a task without breaking a sweat is to demand invisible labor. You are asking for superhuman results without having to acknowledge the toll that effort takes on the human being.
It's the expectation that, a senior engineer should be able to fix a catastrophic database crash in under 10 minutes while casually sipping a latte.
Exactly. Management wants the ocean-sized problem solved, but they want the process to look as effortless as that calm 16th century swimmer we talked about earlier.
Right. And here's where the narrative takes a dark turn. You would assume that if an employee actually manages to pull off that miracle, if they fix the database silently and effortlessly, they would be rewarded.
You would think so.
But according to the source document, that kind of effortless success often triggers resentment, plunging the company into the third phase, office politics and sabotage.
Because envy is a powerful destructive force. When one person or department makes an impossible job look easy, it exposes the inefficiencies of everyone else around them.
Oh, that makes sense.
The rivalry begins quietly, utilizing tactics designed for plausible deniability. Someone decides to throw shade on the successful work.
And this origin story is vital to understand. Throwing shade did not originate in a corporate boardroom or a marketing seminar.
Not at all.
It was born in late 20th century New York drag ball culture.
Yes, it is the art of making a subtle, passive-aggressive, or snide remark to discredit someone, but doing so without open conflict.
Because marginalized groups often have to navigate complex power dynamics where open aggression is too dangerous, so they invent coded language to survive.
Exactly. And in a corporate hierarchy, that exact same psychological mechanism is deployed by employees who lack the institutional power to openly challenge a rival.
It's the deniability that makes the tactic so effective. It's an insult wrapped in an observation.
Like calling a rival's platform a charming attempt at basic software.
Right. They haven't technically used a curse word or violated HR policy, but they've entirely dismissed your expertise. It's basically giving a colleague a subtle corporate paper cut.
A corporate paper cut, I like that.
It stings, it bleeds a little, but the victim looks petty if they report it to management.
But shade is ultimately just a skirmish. As the pressure mounts and the budget shrinks further, passive aggression is no longer sufficient.
It escalates.
It escalates from subtle paper cuts to active, scorched earth destruction. People start chucking grenades at each other.
We've instantly moved from the nuanced social dynamics of a drag ballroom straight into the trauma of a military battlefield.
Quite the leap.
And the metaphor here is specifically about the weapon chosen. A grenade is not a sniper rifle, it doesn't require precision, and it isn't designed to take out a single calculated target.
A grenade is the definition of indiscriminate destruction. When a soldier throws a grenade, they are prioritizing maximum chaos over strategic targeting.
So in a modern office, chucking a grenade is the disgruntled manager who realizes their own project is failing, so they decide to blow up the momentum of a cross-departmental presentation.
Right. They ask irrelevant, impossible to answer questions in front of the CEO, not to find a solution, but just to watch the room burn.
Exactly. While throwing shade is like a subtle paper cut, chucking grenades is basically pulling the pin and setting the entire conference room on fire.
And the real devastation of a grenade isn't just the initial explosion, it's the shrapnel.
The collateral damage.
Exactly. When that manager blows up the meeting, the project stops, yes, but the corporate shrapnel hits all the innocent bystanders. The junior designers, the HR representatives, the interns, they all suffer from a delayed launch or a frozen budget.
It takes months for a company culture to heal from that kind of indiscriminate attack.
Which begs the crucial question for anyone listening who has found themselves sitting in that burning conference room.
All right, how does a team survive the shrapnel? How do you pivot from surviving these destructive grenades to actually going on the offensive?
You have to shift into the fourth and final phase of our deep dives: narrative strategy, frenzy, and the ultimate comeback.
You cannot just react emotionally to a grenade. You have to pivot to cold, calculating logic. You have to game it out.
This idiom is derived directly from modern game theory and military wargaming. It is a highly systematic, emotionally detached approach to conflict.
So gaming it out means systematically analyzing, modeling, and evaluating every potential decision and competitor reaction before launching, say, a new pricing structure.
It's the perfect antidote to the chaos of the grenade. You are playing three-dimensional chess while the saboteur is just trying to flip the board over.
If we launch our new pricing structure on Tuesday, what does competitor A do? If they drop their prices, how do we counter on Thursday?
You remove the panic by predicting the future.
And when you game it out correctly and you launch the right product at the exact right time, the market responds. The energy completely shifts, and suddenly your customers are knocking themselves over.
The visual language here shifts again, from military coldness to mob psychology. Knocking themselves over describes a chaotic, excited crowd rushing forward so fast they physically trip over each other.
Tapping directly into the psychology of scarcity and the fear of missing out, people are wildly eager and impatient to capture an opportunity.
Like users rushing for a limited edition app subscription.
But getting a consumer base to that level of absolute frenzy doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? A product rarely sells itself. Someone has to step up and act as the catalyst.
Someone has to stump for the product.
Yes, and I have to admit, out of all the historical origins in our source document, this one might be the most evocative.
It really transports us specifically to 19th century American political campaigns.
Exactly. Picture early America. Towns are literally being carved out of the wilderness. Forests are being cleared, and when an early politician travels to a remote town to deliver a passionate speech, there is no amphitheater, there is no stage.
So the candidate literally stands on top of the wooden stump of a freshly cut tree in the middle of the dirt town square, physically elevating themselves above the crowd to be heard.
It is a profoundly vulnerable position. To stump for an idea means to passionately and continuously advocate for it. You have no teleprompter, no slick production values.
You are putting your own physical body out there, relying entirely on the force of your conviction to elevate your message.
The contrast between that gritty 19th century reality and today's business world is just hilarious to me. Like, I'm picturing a hyper-polished Silicon Valley CTO wearing a meticulously clean $500 t-shirt, standing on a rotting, insect-infested wooden tree stump in the middle of a neon-lit tech conference center, just screaming about their new AI tools.
It's a great image, but the mechanism is identical. The technology evolves, but the human requirement for passionate, vulnerable advocacy remains unchanged. You have to put your reputation on the line to move the crowd, but the narrative requires one final action to achieve total victory. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a wild shift.
Yeah, we move from the defensive military strategy of gaming out to the aggressive, primal act of clawing back.
Exactly. The very last idiom in our source document strips away all the intellect, all the logic, and all the strategy. To truly recover what was lost, the company must engage in an act of pure, primal aggression. They have to claw back.
Today, we use it as a dry, legal, or financial term like clawing back a CEO's bonus after a scandal, or reclaiming lost market share.
But the imagery isn't legal at all. It is straight out of a nature documentary. It invokes a primal predator using its sharp claws to forcefully, violently drag a piece of meat back into its possession.
It carries a profound implication. It acknowledges that the market is not polite.
Right.
What is yours will not be returned to you willingly by your competitors.
You cannot ask for it back. You have to take it. You have to sink your claws into the dirt and pull with everything you have.
It completely shatters the illusion of that sanitized, safe corporate language we discussed at the very beginning.
It really does. What an incredible conceptual journey these 12 phrases represent.
Right. We started in a cramped 1950s living room, politely sipping tea, while an absurd, multi-ton elephant destroyed the furniture. We navigated the medieval accounting tricks of robbing St. Peter to pay St. Paul.
We survived the scorched earth military tactics of colleagues chipping live hand grenades across the conference room table.
And we ended with a primal predator sinking its claws into the earth to aggressively take back its territory.
And this is precisely why exploring the origins of these phrases is so vital for you, the listener. These idioms are not just casual vocabulary words to sprinkle into a Slack message.
They are potent conceptual tools.
Exactly. Understanding their vivid origins allows you to read the room better, communicate with precision, and navigate the very real dynamics of your own workplace.
When you know that an executive asking you to work without breaking a sweat is actually trapping you in a biological paradox that demands invisible labor, you can push back on the scope of the project.
When you recognize that someone throwing shade is utilizing a survival tactic born in drag ballrooms to subtly discredit you because they lack real power, you can address the insecurity driving the behavior.
You stop just floating passively through the corporate life cycle, and you start actively navigating the messy power dynamics of your office.
You understand the true stakes of the conversation, regardless of how polite the tone of the meeting might be.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly uncomfortable question to ponder long after this deep dive ends.
Oh, absolutely.
We love to tell ourselves that modern office culture is highly evolved. We preach collaboration, synergy, and mindful leadership. But if our modern office language, the actual words we instinctively reach for when the pressure is on, is so deeply rooted in the chaotic explosives of military combat, the desperate survival tactics of a clawing predator, and the zero-sum debt collection of the Middle Ages.
What does that actually reveal about the psychological reality of our jobs?
Exactly. Are we truly just collaborating on projects, or have we secretly just dressed up primal warfare in business casual? Think about that the next time you log on to a status update call.